We're there.
All right. Okay, we are live. Good evening, everyone, and we hope you're doing well, and thank you very much for joining us. My name is Matt Rooney. I'm the editor of SaveJersey.com, and I have the pleasure of being one of two moderators for tonight's one and only NJ-03 debate for the Republican primary this year, 2020. And there are two contestants who will be introducing shortly, but first I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to meet my co-moderator, who certainly led the way in making tonight possible, none other than Stephanie Fawnin, who is the editor of Tap Into Barnegat Waretown. Good evening, Stephanie.
Good evening, Matt.
And as I'm sure you can guess, I'm coming to you from New Jersey tonight, South Jersey actually, but through the magic of Zoom, you can see the Capitol behind me. That's the place in real life where both of tonight's contestants hope they'll have the chance come January to represent the constituents of New Jersey's 3rd Congressional District. But between now and then, coming up on the first Tuesday of July, it's the opportunity for Republicans in the 3rd District to decide which of these two candidates they'd like to have lead their party. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Katie Gibbs. Good evening, Kate.
Good evening, Matt and Stephanie.
And David Richter.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you both for joining us. Now, before we get started tonight, I want to run through the rules that have been agreed upon by the campaigns. First and foremost, there's going to be a 2-minute opening statement by both candidates. And through a very sloppy but accurate coin flip by myself, we've determined that Kate is going to have the opportunity to deliver the first opening statement tonight, but that also means that David will deliver the closing statement last. So there's going to be a 2-minute opening statement for both individuals, 2-minute closing statement for both candidates. Questions tonight have been selected by the moderators, myself and Stephanie. No one else has had an opportunity to curate these questions. We've come up with some. We've been informed by some that have been submitted by you, the audience, that are watching this evening via an email address we set up. And then there's a couple questions that we like so much that we're going to ask them directly. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer the questions which we're going to pose to them. And then the other candidate will have a 60-second rebuttal opportunity should they choose to avail themselves of it. And then last but not least tonight, the final questions are going to be asked to the candidate by the other candidate. And they're each going to have an opportunity to do so. So unless there's any rules I forgot, and Stephanie will certainly let me know whether that's the case, then we will begin with Kate's opening statement.
Matt, you actually got that flipped. I'm supposed to go second both
Oh,
times.
did I flip it? See, we had a joke earlier that sometimes it's better to go first, sometimes it's better to go last. So David, you're going to go first.
Okay, Kate was correct, but I wasn't going to say anything.
See, that was actually a trick, by the way, at the onset to get you both to agree to something. I succeeded. I can leave now.
Good. Well, let me get started. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. I just want to do two things. I want to introduce myself to you, talk a little bit about my background, and then why I'm running for Congress. I'm a conservative Republican. I have been my entire life. And I'm a South Jersey guy. I grew up here. I grew up in Willingboro in Burlington County. I went to college and law school right across the river in Philadelphia at the University of Pennsylvania. And I'm an engineer and a lawyer by training. I'm an engineer. I like to solve problems. And as an attorney, I think that's great preparation for service in Congress, where we are lawmakers, legislators, actually writing and rewriting our nation's laws. In addition to that, I earned 2 master's degrees, one in managing mega projects at Oxford, and another in government from Harvard. I think I'm very well trained for this job. I spent most of my career in the 3rd District, working in a family business. When I joined it, it was struggling. It was on the verge of bankruptcy. And over the next 2 decades, I helped turn it around, made it one of the top firms in the world at what it does. And what that company does when I was there and still today is it manages the construction of public works and infrastructure all over the world. And when I started there, we had less than 300 employees. And when I left as the company's CEO, we had 4,300 employees. So I know how to create jobs. I know the challenges that businesses face in dealing with the government and paying taxes and meeting a payroll and dealing with regulation. And I want to bring the things that I learned in business to government. Now, why am I running for Congress? Well, like President Trump, I'm a successful businessman and a political outsider. But just like you, I'm a private citizen. I care about my country. I care about my state. I care about my community. And I want to serve my country in Congress. I saw the Democrats take over in 2018 in the House. Nancy Pelosi took that speaker's gavel back from Paul Ryan. And what the House has done in the last 2 years is almost nothing. They have been obstructionist. They have stood in the way of the president's agenda in Congress, fake investigations, phony reviews between Russia, Ukraine, and everything else they've done. They've done nothing but stand in the way of the president accomplishing what he's been elected to do by the American people. So I'm looking forward to taking this seat away from Andy Kim. He has not done a great job for the people of this district. And I want to get to Congress so I can work with the president to lower taxes, cut wasteful spending, promote our military and protect our veterans, help build infrastructure. And the president announced $1 trillion infrastructure plan today, which I fully support, and do everything I can to make sure that the Second Amendment is protected and our seniors are protected going forward. And hopefully I didn't go over my 2 minutes.
Excellent. Katie?
Thank you, everyone watching. And thank you, Matt and Stephanie, so much for serving as moderators. In the midst of this pandemic, the unrest and the socialist agenda that's advancing, it's more important than ever that we elect a Republican, take back the House, and support President Trump to rebuild our once booming economy. This seat is a must win to take back the House. And on July 7th, you get to decide who can take on Andy Kim. I'm the only candidate who can attract the broad coalition of voters and financial support we need. That's why I'm asking for your vote, because I've balanced a budget, cut taxes, created private sector jobs, and become a leader in this statewide fight for economic growth. And I break the stereotype of what a Republican looks like. As a young working class female Republican, I can relate across our broad base of conservative voters here in CD3. And many of your experiences are my experiences. And like all of you, I'm not perfect. When I was a college kid, I made mistakes. I own them. I'm not proud, but they don't define me. And I faced adversity to become the woman I am today. David Richter continues to grossly exaggerate and flat out lie, and I look forward to setting the record straight tonight. My opponent refuses to own any of his failures made as an adult, though there were many, and we're learning more every day. But when David led his family business, the company bled money. Shareholders saw only losses, and David continued to rake in a lavish salary, bonuses, and perks. Even worse, the Security and Exchange Commission sued the company for fraud. But David isn't the only politician getting it wrong. AOC, Andy Kim, Nancy Pelosi, and Governor Murphy are taking advantage of the current turmoil so they can push their socialist agenda, rather than fighting for the values that actually matter to people like us. I want to lead that fight as your candidate and as your Congresswoman. I look forward to outlining my vision for a new generation of conservative leadership and a better America we can all be proud of. Let's do this.
Thank you, Kate. The first question will be asked by Stephanie.
Okay, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has reemphasized the importance of healthcare. President Trump said the Republican Party will soon be known as the party of healthcare. What will you do to contribute to fulfilling the president's promise? David?
Thank you, Stephanie. I think we saw it about 10 years ago when Obamacare was implemented, a 1,600-page bill that was passed by Congress in 48 hours. And Nancy Pelosi famously said, you've got to implement the bill, enact the bill in order to understand what's in it. We were promised that that was the solution. It was not a stepping stone to socialized medicine. It was the solution for our healthcare system. And I think what we've discovered over the last 10 years is it's not. And we've seen Democratic presidential candidates over the past year and a half advocating for Medicare for all, single payer, government paid health insurance. That is absolutely the wrong answer for America. That would bankrupt every single private health insurer in the country and put hundreds and hundreds of thousands of employees out of business. I'm not in favor of that at all. I do think there are ways we can improve the healthcare system. I think they need to be market-based. They need to be within the current infrastructure of our healthcare system. A couple specific areas, prescription drugs continue to be overpriced and way too expensive for the people that need them most. And I think that our government can and should take steps to make sure that the drugs that are not just our seniors, but all of us may need for lifestyle or for life itself is readily available and affordable.
Kate, same question.
Well, we agree that Medicare for all that Andy Kim is pushing is absolutely the wrong future for healthcare in this country. Many people don't realize that even if you like your existing healthcare coverage, Medicare for all you'll be forced to give it up. And we saw during COVID that we need to motivate innovation. And New Jersey used to be the world's medicine cabinet. And we need huge advances in research and to bring manufacturing of all kinds of health products back to New Jersey, not only for the jobs and to help us with the economic recovery, but so that we're not, forced in another pandemic to ration care or to have those death panels we hear about or rationing ventilators. We saw what happened with socialized medicine in the VA, and it's an absolute crime that our veterans who put their lives on the line don't get the care that they deserve. And so I will absolutely fight to make sure that we expand choice for veterans and against Medicare for all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I should have said it on the onset, even though we're using Zoom tonight for this debate, we're using a very technologically simple method to inform both candidates that they have 10 seconds left to go, which is the back of a notepad that says 10 seconds. So just in case anybody out there watching tonight was curious what we were trying to do. This next question is for Katie. Governor Murphy's response to COVID-19 is increasingly coming under fire. South Jersey unemployment is through the roof. Businesses are crippled. Life in Burlington and Ocean tonight remains in virtual lockdown mode, with very few exceptions, despite the fact that the curve that Governor Murphy is constantly talking about has not just flattened, it's flatlined. Did, in your opinion, the Murphy administration get it wrong? And specifically, what would you do in Congress to help small businesses now that the damage has already been done? And do you support the notion of federal and state governments expanding contact tracing?
Well, as a lot of you know, I lost my grandmother to complications from COVID, and I understand and take this pandemic very seriously, but we have to get our economy moving again. And I think the vast majority of businesses and residents want to get back to normal, back to doing what they do best, providing for themselves. And we've made significant behavioral and societal changes to be able to move forward and get back to normal or as close to normal as we can. And the governor keeps saying, let's look at the data, let's look at the data. But in the recent showdown he had with business owners in Asbury Park, he didn't point to any data. And, I think the most serious misstep that the governor has taken is his treatment of people in long-term care facilities, people like my mom, people like the staff that took care of her, and veterans who are in long-term care facilities. His administration forced these facilities, knowing the risk, to take patients back in that were positive for COVID. And he's got to investigate this and figure out what went wrong so that we can recover and so that this never happens again. But absolutely, Governor Murphy's gotten it wrong.
David?
Thank you, Matt. Governor Murphy has been a disaster for the New Jersey economy. Decisions he's made, the arbitrariness by which he's made them, we've heard time and time again, science is backing his decisions, and we all know that's not true. He has shut down a large chunk of the economy. It's hit small business particularly hard, and these are the people that can least afford to be out of business for 3-4 months at a time. For some reason, we can go shopping at Home Depot, but we can't go to a corner hardware store. That makes no sense. That makes no sense to anybody except Governor Murphy. He's made decisions that have impacted our daily lives. He may claim that the Bill of Rights is above his pay grade, but it's not. He has an obligation to make sure that the decisions he makes, the executive orders that he implements, are constitutional. That's not for some judge to decide later, 6 months from now, after he's stampeded on all of our constitutional rights. We need to get New Jersey back to business, and we need to do that as soon as possible.
Matt, can I add that, the whims of the nanny state, our Bill of Rights isn't subject to the whims of Governor Phil Murphy and the whims of our nanny state. And we saw, citizens penalized for trying to open small businesses and even for going to church. But the hypocrisy from the left just absolutely kills me. The social media warriors are on social media condemning and shaming and penalizing people one day, and then having a completely different reaction when it comes to violence in our capital city and the protests that we saw. So I think that he absolutely is playing with the Bill of Rights and trying to make decisions based on his own value system and his own politics, rather than standing up for what the First Amendment really means, which is our freedom for religion and speech and freedom of press and assembly.
I'm going to go on to the next question.
Thank you,
David, I'm going to start with you. I guess we'll go back and forth. We're finding that many insurance companies have pandemic exclusion clauses written into their policies. Some federal and state legislators want to address those provisions. There's also talk of government immunizing businesses against COVID-19 liability. What's your position on these legislative initiatives?
I haven't heard about the issue you just discussed, which is insurance companies denying coverage for COVID-19. It's absurd. How they can define this as a pandemic and therefore not subject to their coverage. If people are sick, that's exactly why they buy health insurance in the first place. So they shouldn't be allowed to exclude coverage.
This would be liability coverage, just to be clear.
Okay, understand.
And business interruption insurance too.
And that's another disgrace that, when companies most need their insurance coverage, the insurance companies are happy to take the premiums when things are fine. And then the moment business needs it, this is the perfect example of business interruption and why you buy that type of insurance. So they should be covered. They should be required to be covered. And businesses need that protection. So I'm fully in support of that.
Thank you. Kate?
Yeah, our small businesses are the backbones of our community. Not only do they provide jobs, but they're really the fabric of our main streets and our downtowns that make Burlington and Ocean counties so special. And so we have to do everything we can to protect those small businesses. And it's absolutely ridiculous. Our legislators need to bring a little bit of common sense, roll up their sleeves and actually get things done instead of talking about problems. We need to protect our small businesses, and this is a clear-cut example of business interruption. So insurance companies really need to step up, just like the federal government took really, really drastic measures to keep our economy afloat. Insurance companies need to do the same.
Okay.
This next question's for Kate. Governor Murphy is currently asking the federal government for a multi-billion-dollar federal bailout to address what he says is an anticipated COVID-19 revenue shortfall. But the money, it seems, isn't going to be designated to PPE or ventilators or first responder hazard pay, but rather bailing out what is New Jersey's crippled public pension system and protect public sector jobs. U.S. Senate Republican Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has already expressed his opposition to what's being called blue state bailouts. Were you in Congress, would you vote for a federal bailout of Trenton? And if you would vote for such a bailout, which conditions, if any, would you attach to it?
Listen, as an elected official, you have to do what's best for the people that you represent. But to say that this federal bailout that Governor Murphy is requesting is just in reaction to reduce revenue because of COVID is just ridiculous. As you said, we have a completely broken pension system. Our obligations, the state of New Jersey has not been living within its means for decades. And this is, Democrats in the legislature who have controlled the legislature for 30 years have continued to make New Jersey the least affordable place to do business, to live, to retire. And so New Jersey and other blue states need to make the tough choices and cut the wasteful spending. I mean, some of the things that we waste our money on here in New Jersey include, making sure that illegal immigrants get legal protection and medical services and free community college tuition. And we really need to take care of our own first and take care of New Jersey residents and businesses and avoid this wasteful, ridiculous spending and make the common sense reforms that are actually going to make a real difference.
So the answer is yes or no?
The answer is I would support the legislation if, to support New Jersey, but only if states like New Jersey, like these blue states that just abuse and run up these huge deficits and ridiculous spending priorities, we're going to make reforms to tighten their belts to actually fix the systemic issues. Adding more to this, more fuel to the fire isn't going to help. When you're in a hole, you have to stop digging, and we have to fix our pension system and the other obligations that the state has.
Thank you, Kate. David?
Yeah, well, Kate is right. The fiscal situation in New Jersey is a disgrace and a mess, and we're digging a deeper hole every year. But I'm a fiscal conservative, and these states, including New Jersey, like New York and Illinois and California and others, they don't want to let a crisis go to waste, as Rahm Emanuel famously said. And they're going to look to the federal government to be, for bailout funds, to fix every problem that those states have dug for themselves over decades and decades of overspending and mismanagement. If I'm in Congress, I would vote against federal bailouts for states. New Jersey has to fix its problems. New York has to fix its. The federal government should not be the end all and be all where everyone goes for bailout funds, because the fact is the federal government doesn't have any money. Their money is our money. It's the taxpayers' money. And there's no reason that citizens of New Jersey should be subsidizing citizens of New York or any other state for problems that they created.
Thank you, David.
Okay. David, I'm going to start with you. Images of George Floyd's horrifying death have brought about a period of unrest in this country unseen since the 1970s. Some have called for the defunding of America's police. Do you believe the nation's police need to be reformed, defunded, or is the police culture not, in your view, the real problem?
Well, let me just say that what happened to George Floyd was a disgrace. And I'm glad that former officer Derek Chauvin has been fired as a police officer. Nobody should be treated that way. The police have an obligation to take people under arrest and treat them safely and make sure that they survive that process. That shouldn't be asking too much. And he's rightly off the force. But I think he's a rare exception. I think the vast majority of our law enforcement officers, they've got the toughest job under incredibly dangerous and difficult circumstances. And I believe they need our support. We shouldn't be defunding the police. We should be defending the police, the good police that do their job every day, putting their lives at risk to keep the rest of us safe. And there are absolutely reforms that we need to implement that can get rid of the bad cops. We should do that. President Trump today called for some major national reforms all of which I support. But I think that we need to do more. We need to be protected by our police officers, and we need to be protected from the bad police officers.
Okay, thank you. Kate?
Well, something David and I agree on, the murder of George Floyd was a tragedy and a disgrace and shouldn't have happened. And we do need to fix some of the real systemic problems. And I was glad to see President Trump with some of his proposals today and some of the things that House Republican leader McCarthy has been talking about, reforms to bring about more transparency, accountability, and performance-driven information. But you know, here in CD3, we have really excellent examples of, you know, community policing at its best. And Sheriff Mastronardi and Sheriff Stanfield have created really great relationships with the communities they serve. And we have to stand by our law enforcement that keep our communities safe. And that's not to say, you know, we turn a blind eye. As Pope Francis said, we cannot tolerate or turn a blind eye to any kind of hate or racism, but we have to recognize that violence is self-defeating and self-destructive, and we have to work to make this better. I was really proud to work with Sheriff Stanfield, our prosecutors, police chiefs, to make Burlington County a safer place and to really connect with the community, so that if you are better connected with the community, these types of tensions and brutality can be avoided. And it's important to point out that the same liberals that are, you know, crying about these police policies and the issues we're seeing in urban cities across the country, Baltimore, Detroit, Chicago, have been controlled by Democrats for 50 to 100 years. And it's those same failed policies that are failing those communities and continuing poverty and this type of really untenuous situation that has to be fixed.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Kate, I'm going to ask you another question. While sidelined, right now we've been sidelined by civil unrest, of course, the pandemic, immigration still remains a major issue heading into the fall elections. Do you think the group of people that we refer to as dreamers should be given protected status or a path to citizenship? And if not, what do you think should happen to them?
Well, we absolutely have a crisis in this country, and we need to secure our southern border. I believe in building the wall and sending more enforcement funds down to the law enforcement at our southern border. And if I'm in Congress, I will make sure that we pass comprehensive reform that includes that security for the southern border and fixes that crisis. But I agree with President Trump on this. We have to be compassionate with the dreamers and have that comprehensive reform that has a tough but fair and consistent process to move them towards citizenship. But I'm absolutely against amnesty, and we have to address the crisis at the southern border and our broken immigration system overall.
Okay, thank you. David?
Yes, Stephanie. You know, obviously the immigration system is broken. We have literally thousands and thousands of people coming across the border illegally into our country. This is bad for them. It's bad for our society. I support President Trump's efforts to reform the immigration system to stop as much as possible illegal immigration. I have supported and continue to support building the wall. And I think that, as Kate said, we're also dealing with people and people that have families. And I believe that we should be treating everybody compassionately. With respect to the Dreamers and DACA specifically, you have situations where children were brought here, sometimes as young as babies, who only know English, don't know their native language, only know living in America, and sending them back to a country they don't know, that speaks a language they don't speak, I think is incredibly unfair. I think there's compromise to be had by both sides. I would support DACA. As long as there are other reforms to help fix our broken immigration system, including Democratic support for building the wall. I think there's absolutely an area for bipartisan compromise on this issue.
Okay, thank you. David, I'm going to turn back to you again. Critics suggest that former Congressman Tom MacArthur lost the election to Andy Kim because he voted in favor of the Trump administration's tax reform, which included the SALT cap. What's your position on this?
Yeah, I think that the SALT deduction loss, state and local taxes, Losing that from our federal income tax as a deduction was a mistake and hit New Jersey very hard because we're one of the highest tax states in the country. If I had been in Congress in 2017, I would have worked very hard to get that out of the tax reform bill. I think overall it was a good bill. The one area that it didn't focus on enough was individual tax cuts for middle-class families. It cut taxes for business significantly, and I think that was the right thing to do. I think that helped lead to the economic growth that we've seen over the last 3 years. But the individual cuts didn't go far enough, and certainly for New Jerseyans, didn't go far enough to offset the loss of the state and local tax deduction.
Thank you. Kate?
Yeah, we absolutely must eliminate the SALT deduction cap. It's one of the only places that states like ours that subsidize a lot of other states actually get some funding back. And, we're consistently, if not the last, one of the last in dollars that we receive. So while I support the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I think it was a good start and had a lot of really great features, including those tax cuts for business. But we have to make sure that the tax cuts that were outlined in that act are actually made permanent, and that we work with President Trump so that he and other red state Republican leaders understand the unique challenge in New Jersey in terms of affordability. I've been knocking on thousands of doors every year in this district for over a decade. And what I hear constantly from residents is that they need relief. And, we need a simpler, more modern tax code that has lower rates for everyone across the board and incentivizes, hard work to grow our economy. And I'm the only one who's actually cut taxes right here in the 3rd district to do just that.
Okay,
Hey,
Kate, I have
Stephanie,
another
can I
one
have
for you.
a chance for a rebuttal on that?
Matt?
Well, we let Kate have one extra 30-second rebuttal, so we'll give you yours, and then we will certainly be much stricter going forward about no second rebuttals.
Okay, well, thank you. I wanted to respond specifically to something she said, because one of my strongest positions in running for Congress is that I'm a tax cutter. I think our taxes are way too high, and in New Jersey in particular. And I want to work hard in Congress to cut taxes. Kate, when she was a freeholder, actually raised taxes. Property taxes in Burlington County went up by $6 million while she was a freeholder. She says she cut taxes, but the reality is that she did not.
They were $500,000 lower when I left office than when I took office, and we spent less per person than any other county in the state, bar none.
Not the
Okay.
property taxes.
Wait.
Went up.
Guys, I want to go on to the next question. You can save all that for your closing statements. Kate, I'm going to you. As the Oyster Creek nuclear plant is decommissioned, there are a number of concerns about the safety measures Holtec is taking. The company continues to use unions, but there are allegations that they are using unskilled labor. There are also concerns about transporting the waste. What do you see as your involvement in this process should you serve as the district's member of Congress?
This is such an important issue, not only to Lacey, but to everyone in Ocean County. And what's most important is that whether it's me in Congress, but every level of government, we need to hold Holtec's feet to the fire and make sure that they're accountable, that this is the safest, most modern cleanup ever, that the employees that are working on this project are skilled tradesmen and women who have the right credentials, the right skill set. And, there is a nuclear decommission escrow account. It's basically a trust fund that's created to decommission these types of sites. And, we can't let the private developer that purchased the land try to, cut corners on the kind of employees that are doing the work there and on the cleanup and on the transport of this dangerous, hazardous materials, so that they can use what's left over in the escrow to enrich themselves. We have to hold them accountable and make sure that the workforce that is on site is the best trained, highly credentialed, skilled, and that the contractors are following the rules as laid out by our very aggressive New Jersey DEP standards.
Thank you. David.
Yes, Stephanie. Obviously, decommissioning a nuclear power plant is incredibly complex and potentially very dangerous if not done right. I want to make sure, and I've already promised the citizens of Lacey that I'll be an active overseer of the process, working with the U.S. Department of Energy, which I did in the private sector. When I was at Hill, my former company, we were involved in helping clean up nuclear waste in Savannah, South Carolina, and in Hanford, Washington. And it's a very important process, obviously, for the people that live in the area. It has to be done not just well, but perfectly. And I'm going to make sure that in Congress, I interface not only with Holtec, but also with the federal government to make sure that the citizens in Lacey and all of Ocean County and all of New Jersey are protected as this process goes through, protected for their health and safety, and protected financially as well from the process that Holtec is going through.
Okay, thank you. I have a Social Security question for both of you. David, I'll give it to you first. Social Security has a projected shortfall in 2035. The 3rd Congressional District has a high percentage of seniors that live only on Social Security benefits. And those numbers stand to decrease in the next few years. How will you protect their interests?
The Social Security system is an entitlement that people have come to rely on. When you're talking about people heading for their retirement, their senior years, a lot of them, as you just said, it's maybe the only thing that they're living on and counting on for their retirement. Particularly now when you've seen the stock market head down and 401ks and IRAs and things like that come down dramatically. And the system is on an unsustainable path. You know, sustainability is something we hear a lot from Democrats when they're talking about the environment, but they don't talk about it very often when they're talking about government spending. And the Social Security system right now is on a path toward insolvency. And we've got to make sure that that doesn't happen, because I've got 4 teenage daughters. I want to make sure the system is stable and funded and solvent, not just for the seniors today, but for my daughters when they retire, 50, 60 years from now. So I'm going to work hard to make sure that we have reforms in place that protect the people already in the system, protect the people heading toward retirement in the near future, and people that are going to be counting on that even decades from now.
Okay, thank you, David. Kate?
We have to protect our Social Security for the seniors who are relying on it. And as you all have said, DD3, Burlington and Ocean counties, we have a very high population of senior citizens, and many of them are on fixed incomes. And, the program is only solvent, as you said, through 2035. And our national debt is at 23 trillion and growing by about $1 trillion every year. And this means that our future generations are already going to be saddled with, crushing debt. And that means that the programs that these seniors rely on are already in jeopardy. We already should have taken action, and every day that we wait to take action means that these programs are in jeopardy. And so for people my age who have a long time before retirement, we need to make reforms so that it is solvent when David's girls and people like me are ready to retire. But for people like my mom who have worked their whole lives and rely on it, we have to make sure that we protect it. And I have experience as a freeholder reducing waste and fraud and abuse in government to balance a budget. And I want to bring that experience to this system so we can make sure these programs are protected.
Okay, Kate, I have one last one for both of you for now, and then I'm turning it over to Matt. The Department of Veterans Affairs canceled the contract solicitation for the VA clinic that was supposed to be built in brick. Bidding for the process started in 2016. Ocean County itself has over 40,000 vets. What will you do to contribute in getting the project back on target?
Is this to David or to me?
You.
Okay. So this is one of Andy Kim's greatest failures. He sold his vote to Nancy Pelosi after promising on the campaign trail that he wouldn't. And when the excuse he gave was, well, I'm going to vote for her, but I'm going to do so much for the veterans and for the base. And, we were trying to relocate the Army headquarters here to help us protect the base from BRAC and to bring good paying jobs here. And he failed. And he promised this new hospital. And again, he failed. And as I said before, I've seen the VA system in action. I have a lot of really dear friends who are veterans of the wars that we saw in the 2000s. And to see what they go through, they put their lives and their bodies on the line. They should have the care that they need. And I want to work with President Trump to make sure that we expand what he's already done to allow veterans to get more choice from the doctors of their choice. It's crazy that we're having vets have to go to Philadelphia and North Jersey and East Orange to get the care they need, and they're waiting months and months. So we have to work to make sure that our veterans get the care they need. And the last thing we need is more socialized medicine. We really need to move away from it towards choice.
Thank you, Kate. David, same question.
Yeah, of course. Our veterans have sacrificed so much for our country. They put their lives on the line to defend freedom and defend America. And we don't do enough to take care of them, certainly with regard to healthcare. The VA clinic in Ocean County today is a disaster. It doesn't have sufficient parking, doesn't have sufficient space. It's old. It's not the kind of facility that our veterans should be getting healthcare treatment from. Andy Kim, and Kate was absolutely right. Andy Kim has not done anything for veterans. He sold his vote for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker specifically to get on the Armed Services Committee. And on the Armed Services Committee, he's done almost nothing. He hasn't helped on the base, the Joint Base, when an Army headquarters was potentially going to relocate there. He hasn't done anything for veterans. I'm going to make veterans one of my top priorities in Congress, and we will get a new VA clinic in Ocean County.
Thank you. Matt, I'm turning it over to you.
Thanks, Stephanie. David, this question is for you. Earlier this week, the United States Supreme Court ruled that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 covers bias against LGBT employees, something new. Did the court get it right, in your opinion, or wrong?
That's a great question. I'm a constitutionalist. I believe in an originalist interpretation of laws by courts. I don't believe the judges should be making the law. They should be interpreting the law. I think this is a good example, though, of a situation where they got the process wrong again, because they did write the law. They changed the Civil Rights Act to expand beyond the original intent of no discrimination based on sex, to add sexual orientation and transgender status. I think it's the right decision. I wish Congress had made that decision. I fundamentally believe in equality for all people. It's right there on the written in stone over the entranceway of the U.S. Supreme Court building. Equal justice under law. I believe in equality for everybody. I'm against discrimination of anybody based on anything. I think this was the right decision, but it really should have gone through Congress and the legislative process first to amend the Civil Rights Act, not by the Supreme Court.
Thank you. Kate?
From day one, when I announced my campaign, I said I was running because Washington is broken, and I'm tired of, them not doing their jobs and complaining and the fake outrage, but not actually doing anything that makes people's lives better right here, back home. And so, I think that Congress has to do their job, and they should be legislating this and not, having the Supreme Court legislating from the bench. But I agree with the president on this one. I think that this makes sense. It's about equality of opportunity. And something I say all the time, people ask me a lot when they first meet me, you're a Republican, or, and I always say I'm a Republican because no matter your race, gender, where you were born, who you were born to, the Republican Party is the party about equality of opportunity for those who are willing to work for it. And so this is just another reinforcement of that equality of opportunity. But I agree. I think that Congress needs to do a better job of legislating, not the bench.
Thank you. Kate, this next one is for you. Many, if not most, New Jerseyans have tried a beer on the beach or experimented with marijuana at some point during their youth. Fewer have been charged with shoplifting or banned from a department store, like you were in your 20s. Much more recently, in July 2014, a little over a year before you were elected to the Burlington County Freeholder Board, you were cited for drinking on the beach. Is it fair for voters in the 3rd District to consider these incidents as they weigh voting for or against you? And what, if anything, is different about Kate Gibbs today versus 5 years ago that voters should know before they possibly send you to Congress?
So, Matt, let's get one thing straight. I got a ticket for having a beer on a beach after a charity 5K. It wasn't, carousing. I was on the beach, and I think everybody in the 3rd District has probably had a beer on the beach. So the other incidents that you mentioned, again, were when I was in college. I was a kid and I was dumb. I made mistakes, but I also graduated from college with a double major with honors and went on to put myself through graduate school, earn a master's, become a trustee on the community college board, where I worked to make college more accessible and affordable for people. And then I became the youngest freeholder director in the state, where I ran the most fiscally conservative county government in the state. We spent fewer tax dollars per person than any other county. Moody's upgraded our credit rating to the highest level we'd ever achieved in Burlington County under my leadership. And I was able to improve school security, protect our base, improve services for seniors, veterans, and children, and invest in emergency services communication systems. So I believe that mistakes don't define us. It's that we grow and learn and do better. And I think I've done that.
Thank you, Kate. David, any response?
Yes, thank you. The issue isn't a beer on the beach or the drugs or the shoplifting individually. The problem is with Kate, it indicates a pattern of behavior, of reckless disregard for the law. We've got a situation right now across our country where people are ignoring the law. And whether that's rogue cops or looters or other people destroying statues and burning police cars, I'm a big fan of the rule of law. With Kate, time and time again, she's viewed the law as something that she can disregard when it pleases her. And in addition to those three instances, you've got more. Right now, she's being sued for ethical violations in Burlington County because she put the interests of her union over the Burlington residents. My own campaign filed a complaint against her. Can I finish, please, Kate?
Sure.
My own campaign had to file a complaint with the Federal Election Commission because she has taken illegal campaign contributions from her union.
It's a lie.
And failed to disclose them. She violated Burlington County anti-nepotism policy by making sure that her mother had a job with the Burlington County Bridge Commission. And this goes on and on and on. There's a long pattern with Kate of reckless disregard for the law. And at a time when so many people have little confidence in politicians, the last thing we need in a Republican nominee to take on Andy Kim is somebody who's a lawbreaker, not a lawmaker.
Thank you, David. David, this next question is.
Do I get a rebuttal on that? I think I should.
If you want to have a brief 10-second rebuttal, but I promise you we have more questions coming for everyone. Everybody's going to get a turn. And if we let everybody get that last word in, I'd be fine being here until 10 o'clock, but I'm not sure we'll keep our audience. So 10 seconds.
Just to clear up some of the lies, this isn't a pattern. The one case he brought up was actually dismissed today in summary judgment with prejudice, which means the judge threw it out and said, this is ridiculous. The FEC complaint that you filed is frivolous and you know it. It was party insiders and political operatives growing the party. We weren't speaking to voters. No one there could even vote for us. So you're just tying me up in litigation because you have money. And I didn't hire my mom. She worked for a completely separate, independent, bipartisan entity, the Bridge Commission, and got hired before I was even a freeholder.
Thank you, Kate. David, this next question is for you. While it's certainly not without precedent to relocate in order to run in a given congressional district, your critics and certainly Ms. Gibbs have accused you of blatant district shopping. You initially moved from Princeton, which is located in a deep blue district, the 12th district of New Jersey, to Avalon in Cape May County to run an NJ-02 against Jeff Van Drew. After Jeff Van Drew switched parties to join the GOP, you then decided to run in the 3rd congressional district. What is your legal residence at this moment? And would it be fair for an NJ-03 voter watching tonight to question your commitment to his or her district?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Matt. The 3rd district is where I grew up. It's my home district, probably more than any other place in the world. I grew up in Willingboro from kindergarten through high school. I came back to the district. I worked in a family business that was based in Willingboro and later Evesham for almost 40 years. And I worked there for more than half of that time, for more than 20 years, working in the district. I spent the majority of my life in the 3rd district. I have a home right now in Lawrenceville, 2 towns outside of the district. I have a home in in Avalon at the beach, and I have a home in Island Heights in Ocean County in the district. My legal residence right now is Island Heights. That's where I'm registered to vote. And what I've promised the voters is that over the course of this campaign, we're going to be putting our home in Lawrenceville up for sale. We're going to be moving into the district, and I'll be living in the district for the rest of my life.
Thank you, David. Any reply, Kate?
Yeah, so let's be clear. You've been now registered to vote in 4 different congressional districts in less than 18 months. Florida, District 12 in New Jersey, District 2, and now you're saying Island Heights, which I'm not sure how long you've been living there, probably about a month or 2. And to me, this is about, you're just desperate to get a title. You're an entitled rich guy who's bored and needs validation. And that's why you're willing to tear somebody down just so that you can have a title, and you see it as a status symbol. We see how well having an entitled rich guy who's not from here, how's that working out for us in Trenton with Phil Murphy? The last thing we need is somebody like you down in DC. And you talked a lot about the 3rd district and having your business here until you moved your business out of Evesham and to Pennsylvania. And when asked about it, you said, well, the workforce is better in Pennsylvania. So I guess you think that the people who live here are too dumb to work for you, but maybe just dumb enough to vote for you.
Can I get a rebuttal to that?
Well, I guess, are we expanding the rules now to have a 10-second rebuttal? Sure. After each comment, if the candidates don't mind going a little late this evening?
I'll do the best I can in 10 seconds. But the fact is, I ran for Congress initially because I wanted to serve my country and I wanted to flip a blue district red. I ran in the 3rd district. I only have 10 seconds. Please don't interrupt me. When Jeff Van Drew changed and became a Republican, with the president's support, obviously that wasn't an opportunity. But I looked at the 3rd district and saw somebody in Annie Kim who absolutely does not represent the values of South Jersey or Burlington and Ocean counties, and somebody that should absolutely be taken out of office this November. And I saw candidates running against him that have no ability to beat him whatsoever. So I got into this race to help my country, to flip this district red. It's where I grew up and where I intend to spend the rest of my life.
Thank you, David. Kate, this next question is for you. You're currently employed as the Deputy Director of Local 825 Operating Engineers, a union which vocally supports increased transportation spending, the 2016 gas tax hike in New Jersey, and recent toll increases, including a 36% toll hike on the New Jersey Turnpike, which was recently approved. My question, do you support your employer's position on these issues? And if you do, does that gel with your stated belief as quoted on your website that you want to make New Jersey more affordable?
So a few things, Matt. I'm the Deputy Director of a labor management fund, which represents 1,000 small businesses, as well as the members of Local 825 Operating Engineers. And to be clear, the policy that we supported was the largest and broadest based tax reform package in New Jersey's history. It got rid of entirely the death tax in New Jersey, cut taxes for seniors, cut taxes for veterans, for the working poor, and an across the board sales tax cut. And I've never hidden the fact, and I've actually had conversations with David about this, so I know he agrees with me. He just can't say it because he's in a primary with me. But we both agree with President Trump that infrastructure investment is a huge part of any economy, and especially right now as we're dealing with an economic recovery where there are deficiencies in the private sector. We have our infrastructure is absolutely crippled. It consistently receives a D- from the Civil Society of Engineers. So we know that this is a place that New Jersey should be doing everything we can to get dollars back here to the 3rd district for infrastructure.
Thank you, Kate. David?
Yeah, I'm not sure if she answered your question, but let me do it for her. Kate's campaign has been bought and paid for by the labor union she works for. She supports their positions entirely. They pushed, lobbied, and put ads out there pushing for, in the middle of a pandemic and an economic crisis, an increase in tolls on the New Jersey Turnpike and the Garden State Parkway, and doing that without full public review, as is normally required. They also pushed for a 23 cent a gallon increase in the gasoline tax, They ran on that. And just now, after the Turnpike Authority and the governor approved the toll increases, which increased tolls dramatically. And these aren't minor increases. These are huge increases on drivers in New Jersey that right now can least afford to pay them. They actually ran ads thanking Governor Murphy for raising the tolls on New Jersey drivers. I just found that outrageous. I know a lot of voters did as well. But with respect to whether Kate stands behind what her union does, of course she does. They have paid for her entire campaign. And if she's a congresswoman, she is going to owe them every vote that she has on labor issues.
David, you put out a release today touting Senator Singer's endorsement. He supported the exact same and voted for the exact same package that provided infrastructure investment. And you talked about how your entire career was made off of building infrastructure. And so I guess you don't mind when the revenues that come from the tolls and those taxes are, paying your contracts and building your big mansion in Princeton.
I'm going to interrupt you because I know Matt has another question that kind of will segue into this.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. A brief time together and we already know each other's mind, right?
Yeah.
This question is indeed for David. David, you served as president and COO of Hill International when your company announced the hiring of James Biden, who is the presumptive 2020 Democrat nominee's embattled younger brother. And while you said you had no role in the decision of the Hill subsidiary Hillstone to hire James Biden in 2010, you were also on record claiming responsibility for his termination. So my question is twofold. Do you regret that James Biden was ever brought on? And if you do regret it, can you explain how you had no role in hiring the man who you ultimately played a role in terminating?
Sure, I'd be happy to address that, Pat. Thank you very much. It's one of the biggest lies that the Gibbs campaign has been telling over the course of this campaign. Yeah, I was the COO of the company. My father was the CEO through the whole period of time. He made an investment in a company that became Hillstone International. He did that over my objection, and I lobbied against it. But he was the CEO and he ran the place. Jim Biden was a partner in that business. He came on board. That company was set up solely to sell and develop low-cost housing in third world countries. Kate's campaign has said that I hired Jim Biden. That's a lie. They said, well, he was your business partner. That's a lie. I had no role or responsibility at Hillstone. That company reported directly to my father as the CEO of the company. I watched, after telling our board and my dad that that company was going to fail from the beginning, I watched it fail. And after a couple of years of running up losses for us, he finally agreed with my recommendation to shut the thing down and fire the staff, including Jim Biden. I've never seen or talked to the guy since. He was as useless as his brother. I have no ties to the Bidens, other than the fact that we happen to work for the same company for a period of time.
Thank you, David. Any response, Kate?
I mean, this is just totally phony. You want to take credit for all the successes. I grew the company. I did this. I led it. And then anytime somebody points something out, you just point the finger. And it takes ownership to lead. And we need leaders down in Washington, D.C. to actually get things done, not people who point the fingers and want to take credit for all the successes, but completely ignore any of the failures. And maybe this is why you were pushed out by shareholders, because when you were in charge, the stock price tanked by 80%. But you want to criticize me. I got in the arena knowing that people would criticize and ridicule me because I really believe that this is the right thing to do, that it's the right thing for the party and it's the right thing for this district. And, after, you brought up Congressman Van Drew, and after he bravely joined the Republican Party, you didn't just say, oh, great, he's on the team. No, that's not what you did. You went on TV and you talked to a New York Times reporter. And both of the state co-chairs for Trump's reelect, Senators Panaccio and Testa, condemned you and said that your rhetoric was more closely aligned with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren than any member of the Republican Party, and that you disparaging the party, the president, and Van Drew were hurtful. So
I did know such things, Kate, and I didn't.
So the two Trump
Everything you've said in the last 2 minutes is a
didn't-
complete
they
lie.
didn't- they didn't
Every
say that?
single thing.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Kate. Now we are coming down the home stretch. We're running a little bit behind, partly because of our technical issues, partly because we're having a spirited debate. Next, we have 2 questions from the audience, and I think, Stephanie, you're up to deliver them.
Okay, I'm going to, this comes from Vivian in Toms River, and she initially requested that only David answer this question, but I am going to ask both of you. She specifically Vivian wanted specifically to know if you would fight against late-term abortions. And we want to ask that of both of you, but we'd also like to know your position on abortion as a whole.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie.
Okay.
Yeah, I am not in favor of late-term abortions or partial birth abortions. I think they're horrible. I think government can, within the confines of the Roe v. Wade decision, I think government can and should outlaw them. I think they're terrible procedures. I'm against public funding of abortions, what's often called in Washington the Hyde Amendment, that prevents any federal funding of abortions. And I'm also in favor of parental consent for minors who are seeking an abortion. I have 4 young daughters. I would hate to think that someone could perform a surgical procedure on them without my or my wife's consent. So I've been a firm believer in parental consent for a long time.
But what about is there any time that it's acceptable for an abortion in your mind?
Well, that's what the law says. That's what the Supreme Court has said. And Roe v. Wade, 50 years in, is still the law of the land. I think if they're going to be abortions, they should be as early as possible in the pregnancy, and that we should not allow it, as the question asked, late-term abortions at all, except in the case of the life of the mother being at stake.
Okay, thank you. Kate, same question.
Yeah, I was raised Catholic, and my faith is really important to me, and so is the sanctity of life. And I'm really proud to have been not endorsed, but recommended by the New Jersey Right to Life. And I would absolutely fight to ban late-term abortions as well as partial births. Totally agree that there should absolutely be no taxpayer funding. And it's crazy that, in New Jersey, you can't go to a tanning salon without parental consent, but that you could go for major surgery. That's such a huge, moral dilemma, that to think that a minor could have this done without parental notification just doesn't make any sense. So I think that answers everything.
Well, almost. Are there any circumstances that you feel it's acceptable?
First trimester, incest, rape, and life of mother.
Okay, thank you. Matt, you're going to take this long one that we have?
Of course, I'll take the long one. So this question comes from Timothy at Fort Dix, who did what we would hope every voter would do in your district, which he went and took a look at your websites, specifically on the Second Amendment issue. So he kind of directed his question at both of you. So I'll start with Kate with his commentary about your website. Kate, your campaign site says you support, and I quote, reducing gun violence without unduly infringing on gun rights. The word unduly signifies you support restricting gun rights in the name of safety if it's not too noticeable. Combined with your open support for gun buyback programs, with your support for increased barriers for buying weapons, with even more background checks, in his opinion, that indicates you're not in his words, a Second Amendment absolutist.
Well, I think we need to protect our Second Amendment rights. They're sacred, whether it's not just about hunting or protecting from intruders, that's important. But I also really believe that it's part of the keystone to our democracy is being able to defend ourselves. And, I support the Castle Doctrine, which is self-defense. I was really disappointed that recently, just the past few days, the Supreme Court decided not to hear 10 cases, 3 of which actually originated in New Jersey. One of them was about a woman right here in South Jersey, Carol Bound, who was waiting for her gun permit because she had an active protection order because of domestic abuse. She had a very credible threat and she wasn't able to get her carry license or her permit. And she unfortunately fell victim to her domestic abuser. And so when there is critical threat, I absolutely think we need to make sure that we're not infringing on those Second Amendment rights. I want to make sure that guns are out of the hands of bad guys, but there are ways to prevent gun violence, like what we did in Burlington County. We created a $20 million school security grant program so we can make schools safer. There have already been ribbon cuttings without passing any stupid resolutions that don't do anything and without infringing on rights, but we made kids safer. And so those are the kind of common sense solutions we need to address gun violence without infringing on our sacred Second Amendment rights.
And you would support buyback programs?
Locally, Sheriff Stanfield and the county did gun buybacks. They were completely voluntary, and they're mostly ways to get unused, unwanted, old kind of guns that could be broken, could be in pieces. It was an optional voluntary program that we worked with the sheriff's office on. But again, it was voluntary, and there was no list keeping and no, removal of due process.
Thank you, Kate. David, this is also from our friend Tim from Fort Dix. He says, your campaign site is less outwardly, in his opinion, hostile to gun rights, even supporting concealed carry, but it seems specifically worded to downplay the purpose of guns to being for hunting, sport, collection, and self-defense. Do you acknowledge that the primary purpose of the Second Amendment is to be a direct answer to government tyranny?
Yeah, I think that's safe to say. That's what the text of the Second Amendment says. And I am a very strong defender of people's Second Amendment rights. We have that list on our website, but it's not an exhaustive one. I believe that law-abiding citizens have a constitutional right to own firearms for whatever purpose they want. And what government should be doing is preventing guns from being in the hands of criminals and the mentally ill. There are certain things that we can do to stop that from happening, and we should do that. But again, law-abiding citizens have a fundamental right. I believe in concealed carry, and I'll push for that in Congress. I think that's a fundamental right. I think that particularly women, who are especially afraid of potential domestic violence or violence in our streets, tend to be the strongest advocates for gun rights. And I stand with them. Concealed carry is important for women that want to defend themselves. And for men as well. And I fully support that issue.
Thank you, David. And now we've come to the final phase of the question period, the debate. As I mentioned at the beginning, the candidates have an opportunity to ask each other a question. So I fouled this up at the beginning, so everybody feel free to correct me. I believe David gets to ask the first question.
Thank you, Matt. Kate, you worked for a union since 2014. In 2016, your union endorsed Hillary Clinton for president and gave her $3 million towards her campaign to defeat Donald Trump. In 2017, your union endorsed Phil Murphy for governor. Your union advocates for higher tolls, higher gasoline taxes, and spends about 80% of its money on Democratic candidates. Your union has essentially funded the Trenton swamp for quite some time. They've also funded your campaign and a lot of the people that voted for you and endorsed you on the eve of the Ocean County Convention. I'd like to know one issue that you actually disagree with your union on, because my position from the beginning has been you will be their puppet in Congress. They've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on your campaign. And I'd like to know something that you disagree with them on.
Sure. So I have to work for a living. I wasn't handed a company by my dad. And so I have to work for, to pay the mortgage and pay my student loan debt. You were handed a company, sank it, got fired. And you're attacking my organization, which has been praised by President Trump. And he even named the leader of this organization to his Economic Recovery Task Force. And I'm proud that I work to create job opportunities for hardworking, middle-class, blue-collar workers that live right here in the 3rd District. And if you want to know something that I disagree with on, there's a huge difference between private unions and public unions, a huge difference in the way that they collectively bargain, the way that they're compensated. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we have here in New Jersey, both civil service and public employee unions. It's duplicative, it causes waste. And I've seen how difficult it is at the local level. And that's something that I want to make sure that I take my balancing budget acumen that I had in Burlington County to the federal government so that we can shrink our debt and grow our economy. We saw that the economy was growing at record levels and unemployment was at its lowest. And that's why we need to get this seat back so we can take back the House and continue those economy growing policies.
Thank you, Kate. And now, Kate, you get to ask a question of David.
Sure. So when your company was sued by the Security and Exchange Commission for fraud, it was because during the Libyan deal that you did while Muammar Gaddafi was in power, there was some sort of discrepancy with the currency, and so you underreported the losses on those financial statements. And you were COO at the time. And so what I'd like to know is, did you not understand the financial statements, or did you not look at them? And were you an incompetent COO, in other words, or were you purposely misleading your shareholders when you were issuing stock?
There's so many mistruths in that question. It just sort of undermines the fact that you really know anything about business. The reality is there was a complaint filed by the SEC against the company. It was on a minor accounting issue. The issue came up in early 2014 at a time when I wasn't the CEO of the company. I was the COO, as you said, and finance reported to the CEO. It was an issue that never came up to me for review. The company was sued by the SEC after I left the company. I was never part of that lawsuit. I was never alleged to have done anything wrong. I spoke with the SEC and told them everything I knew. And the company wound up settling subsequent. Nothing that they said or did implicated me whatsoever. Hill is a big global company. It gets sued from time to time. And this was something that I wasn't involved in. And you can keep throwing arrows at Hill, but I'd like to stand up and be accountable for the things that I do and the decisions I make. The buck stops here when you run a company, when you're the CEO, but I wasn't always the CEO of Hill.
When you're a corporate officer, you didn't look at the financial statements?
Of course I did, Kate. This is a rather
discreet. They just fooled you? You have 4 advanced degrees from very prestigious universities and they just bamboozled you?
Would you like the answer, or do you want to talk over me? The answer is it's a very discrete issue about foreign currency exchange rates and how they impact intracompany loans between the parent Hill, which is a U.S. corporation, and its foreign subsidiaries. It was an issue that never came up to me. It was a decision made by 2 accountants in our finance department who didn't report to me. It never became an issue until after I left the company. And like I said, I didn't make every decision at Hill. It was a pretty broad company. A family business is a very great situation to be in. You can keep talking about how I was born on third base with a silver spoon in my mouth, but the fact is I was born poor. And my dad started that company to feed his family after he lost his job. And he and I worked together for a long time, and a family business is the greatest situation in the world 95% of the time, but the 5% of the time when we disagreed, like we disagreed on Hillstone and Jim Biden, or when we disagreed on other issues, got pretty contentious. But I stand behind the decisions I make. I take personal responsibility for them. Unlike you, who has blamed other people for every mistake she's ever made. You've blamed your shoplifting on peer pressure from your friends from high school. You've blamed everything that you've ever done on somebody else.
Thank you, David and Kate. We have now arrived at closing statements. I think tonight definitely went quick. I don't know if the candidates feel the same way. David, you have the opportunity for the first closing statement. Your 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much, Matt. 2020 is a very important election year. We've got a Democratic Party that's heading off the reservation, so to speak, heading toward leftism and socialism. And frankly, over the last couple of weeks, we've seen pretty much total anarchy. This is an important election. We need to reelect President Trump. We need to make sure that Joe Biden is not our next president. He will take this country in the wrong direction. He ran as a moderate, but he's listening to the most liberal, most leftist, most extreme parts of his own party. President Trump has done a great job with this country, getting the economy up and moving. And we need 4 more years of the president. That's why I'm running. When he gets reelected to a second term, he cannot have Nancy Pelosi running the House of Representatives. And if we're going to make that happen, we need to make it happen right here in the 3rd district. We need to make sure Andy Kim does not get reelected. He is a terrible congressman for this district. He has lied to the voters of the 3rd district. He said he wouldn't vote for Nancy Pelosi as speaker. And that's the very first thing that he did. He said he was going to be a moderate voice in Congress, and he joined the House Progressive Caucus, where he hangs out with AOC and Ilhan Omar and the Squad and Bernie Sanders. That is not a moderate group by any means. And he voted to impeach President Trump on trumped up charges in a district where President Trump won in 2016 by 6 points. We need the best possible candidate that we can to knock Andy Kim out of Congress. Kate Gibbs can't do that. Based on her history, her ethics, her integrity, her poor track record as a freeholder, where taxes went up, spending went up, and Burlington County was a sanctuary county for illegal criminal aliens. She cannot win the general election. I can. I've got a record of success in life, record of success in the private sector. I know how to create jobs. I know how to work with President Trump to rebuild the economy and get this country moving again. I hope tonight has helped you determine that I'm the candidate that you want to support on July 7th. I hope I can count on your vote, and thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, sir. Kate, your 2 minutes.
Republicans in South Jersey have a huge opportunity. We can change the perception of what a Republican looks like, attract new supporters, and we can have it all start right here in CD3 in a nationally watched race. We can beat Andy Kim, take back the House, support President Trump, and elect the most qualified person in this race. I'm that candidate. Like the voters of this district, I know the value of hard work. I put myself through college and undergraduate school, and I spent the first part of my adult life working right here in the 3rd district to elect Republicans. And as Freeholder director, I led the most fiscally conservative county in the state, spending fewer tax dollars per person than any other. And now I lead the fight for economic development and good paying jobs and to grow our middle class. I'm not asking for you to support me because I'm a woman. I'm asking you to support me because I've lowered taxes, shrunk government, and delivered for people right here in South Jersey, right here in the 3rd district. I'm the only candidate who can win in November. Nominating David will be an absolute disaster and a gift to the Democrats. He trashed President Trump publicly in 2016, saying he wasn't qualified to be president. But his resume includes being pushed out of that family business, partnering with Joe Biden's corrupt brother, profiting off of deals with a terrorist, and opening 3 offices in China. Now, unlike David, I'm actually a voter and a taxpayer in this district, and I chose to live here. The 3rd district is home. It's not just the next place to run for office. I don't just want to be a congresswoman. I want to be your congresswoman. In Congress, I'll fight to uphold the Constitution. I'll fight for conservative principles and the 3rd district. And I'll support our president and the Republican Party because that's who I am. I'm not afraid to own it or to stand up for what's right. I'm scrappy as hell, and you'll never find a better fighter in Congress for you than me. I'd be honored to serve as your congresswoman, and I'm asking for your vote. God bless. Let's do this.
Thank you very much, Kate. And that's a wrap. I want to thank with all my heart everyone that tuned in tonight to watch this debate online. Obviously, we're dealing with extraordinary circumstances, making it difficult for people to get together. So we certainly appreciate your investment in getting to know these 2 candidates. I absolutely want to thank the best possible co-moderator you could ever have, Stephanie Fawnin. If you've never visited Tap Into Barnegat Waretown, please do. It's a fantastic Ocean County news source. And of course, I want to thank both candidates, Kate Gibbs, David Richter, and your campaigns and their respective staffs for helping make tonight possible. Do not forget, there's a reason why we're having this debate in the middle of June, because primary day has been moved to July. You may be getting your mail-in ballot if you haven't received it already. Please take this race seriously, return it in time, and have your say on the fate of your nation and certainly your district. And you can certainly follow more about this race both on my website, on Stephanie's, and certainly through both campaign websites. Could you maybe both just tell us real quick your campaign website and maybe your Instagram handles, Kate?
Sure. I'm Kate 4NJ on everything. So Kate, FORNJ.com on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Thank you so much, Matt and Stephanie. Really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone watching.
Thank you, Kate. And you, David?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. It's David Richter NJ on both Facebook and Twitter. And our website is richter2020.com.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, everyone. And this video will be available on both Save Jersey's platforms as well as Tap Into's platforms in days to come if you want to go back and rewatch it. Have a great night. God bless. Take care and be safe.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.